Welcome. My name is Ray Kline. I'm a certified professional inspector with InterNACHI. Today we're going to be shooting an InterNACHI Home Inspection Standards of Practice video course, and we're going to be covering all of the items in the Standards of Practice. We are not going to exceed the Standards of Practice. We're going to do this on this property here. This is in Colorado. The SOP starts with roofing, so let's go ahead and get started on the roofing. Okay, this is section 3.1, roofing, the roof materials. It specifically states in the SOP that inspectors are not required to walk on the roof. That would exceed the SOP, but we are required to inspect from the ground or from the eaves. With this particular roof, I'm going to go start with the ground and just specifically do that with a pair of binoculars to improve my vision. And the first thing I'm noticing right away is I've got some obvious surface damage that appears to be from a past hailstorm. I'm working my way across the front section of the roof. I've got some loose shingles, and I've got a temporary patch on the roof too that probably was put on to stop any leaks that were caused by the hail damage. I'm also noticing some tree overhang to the roof, which I'll put that in my report too as a note to trim that back. And this damage I would rate is pretty severe. So this roof is going to need to be replaced. And that's what my findings are going to be in my report. I will recommend they get a professional roofer come out and take a look, but I would recommend a new roof. Now we're going to inspect the gutters, and that is required in the SOP under the roofing section. The first thing I'm going to notice here, looking at this gutter on the front, I can see the slope is not what we'd like to see, about 1/4 of an inch per 10 feet. The middle looks like it's pretty low. So these gutters probably would not drain very well. So I'm going to recommend an elevation change in these gutters so they maintain that 1/4 inch per 10 feet. Now I'm going to get up on the ladder and take a look at the gutter up on the roof. Right away I noticed that all the gutters are full of debris. They're full of vegetation. They're probably not going to flow any water in the current state they're in right now, so they need to be cleaned out. We're going to move on to the roofing downspouts now. And the first thing I like to do is just make sure that our downspouts are secure to the house. And then I'll go down here and look and see if we have at least a 4 foot to 6 foot downspout extension. I always like to check these for damage or debris that might be clogging up the downspout. If there is any damage or any kind of debris in here, that really can affect the way the rain gutters handle the extra water. Now we're going to move on to the vents, flashings, and chimney or any roof penetrations in the SOP. And from the ground here right away I can see that I don't have any drip edge flash anywhere on this roof. So I'm going to put that in my report and recommend that. All of the plumbing vents up on the roof, the top end of the roof, all look pretty good. So we're going to just leave that. I won't have any notes in my report with that. So now we're going to go check the chimney. Now we're moving on to the fireplace chimney right here. Actually, this does not penetrate the roof, but it does penetrate the outside of the house. And this is a gas log fireplace. What I'm looking for here is just any damage to this chimney cap, any kind of debris that might be clogging up the opening. It looks pretty good. I don't see any damage or any debris. I can tell that this is the chimney and chimney cap for the fireplace. I've been inside already. The fireplace is behind this. I believe that this is going to be a B vent type vent pipe on here. So make sure you watch out for this and note any damage, possible clearance issues with the eave above. Look for black spots where you might have some incomplete burns where it put a lot of soot out here on the siding. That's another thing to look for. And this one here looks good. This is going to be section 3.2, exteriors, and the first thing we want to do is inspect all of the exterior wall covering materials. I'm going to be taking photographs so I have a record of all of the exterior wall covering materials And I will pick up any defects too along the way that I see. So let's go ahead and get started here on the front of the house. Basically what I'm looking for is just to make sure all of the siding is tight. There's no underdriven nails or fasteners. I'm looking at this trim work, making sure we don't have any water damage of any kind in the corners, that our caulking is still secure. And get a little bit over here, we got some brick. We got some brick on the back of the porch here. Got some brick columns here. The brick columns are going to fall under our structural portion, so I'll get that later. But what I want to do is just come in here and look at the brick surface coverings. Look for cracks, any loose brick. Make sure you got your lintel across the door here to carry the weight of the upper brick. And so far everything looks pretty tight, pretty good. Check all the siding here. Check all this trim. This siding appears to be like a masonite hardboard siding. So that's what I'm going to note in my report. You want to check all your fasteners on the window trim and the door trim as well on the exterior. Make sure everything's secure. Now we're on the east side of the house. We're going to inspect this. We've got a lot of, I don't know, little nails or something here that I'll probably note in the report that these get pulled out and sealed. We got some unused holes here as well. It's possible somebody had something hanging up here. We've got a little bit of paint chipping here and peeling. I'll probably note that in my report. We're not really required to inspect or make any comments about any cosmetic damage, but in this case, not having this painted could actually hurt the siding. So I think that we should at least note that for a paint touch-up. So far everything looks pretty good. Down here I'm noticing some water damage down at the bottom of this trim right behind this downspout. I'm going to go ahead and make a note of that in my report. You can actually see it here on the side as well. It actually looks like this trim piece is also loose. So I'm going to go ahead and note that too. Let's continue on. We're now on the north side of the property. And I can see we've got some deteriorating caulking and some missing. So we want to make a note about that in our report. We recommend that the exterior windows and doors get re-caulked around the edge. Got a little bit of water damage on that upper trim on the second floor. You can see that dark spot there on the corner. I'm going to have that in my report. You can see where the caulking is failing here along the bottom of the window, or next to the trim. You want to get that addressed. Got a little siding damage here next to this electrical receptacle. I'll put a note in there for that. It's going to need some kind of repair to keep the water out of this electrical device. What I'm doing now is just checking some pretty common spots where you get some water damage, and one of them is usually this trim piece right below the patio door. And I can see that we've got some peeling paint, failed caulking, so I'll probably just put that in with my note that I'm going to have about all the caulking to be replaced. I want to make sure all these gaps, like here in the corner, get those filled up with caulking. Got some more loose trim here. We'll want to get that taken care of. So far, what I'm finding is just some maintenance problems. Maybe some deferred maintenance, a little bit of water damage or weather damage. Take a One last photo here off the side of the house. And I think we'll move on to the west side. Again, we've got some peeling paint, faded paint. So really we need some paint touch-ups and some caulking. I'm also looking for the flashing above all the windows and doors as I'm going through and looking at the exterior. We've got some overdriven nails here in the siding. I probably recommend they get those filled with some caulking. All in all, this siding is in pretty good shape. It just needs some updated maintenance. A little bit of painting and some caulking. This concludes our exterior wall inspection. This is the exterior eaves, soffits, and fascia. So we're going to start up here in the front of the house, and I'll start looking at everything up above on the second floor. Okay, I'm going to move down to the next level. I get down here, I can see some loose soffit right here. I want to note that. And as I go down on this fascia, I've got some water damage right here too, and it's loose as well. The water damage doesn't surprise me because this particular house didn't have any drip edge flashing on it to prevent this. I can see along the fascia, I can see some stains here where the water off the roof is actually getting behind the gutter and coming down onto the fascia. This is a result of that, is this water damaged fascia material. Okay, let's go move over to the side. Okay, we're back over here on the east side of the house, so we're going to start looking really closely in the corner on our soffit and our fascia. Everything down here on the first floor looks pretty good. Now I'm going to be looking up towards the second floor. I can see that we've got our soffit vents for the attic space are in there. Move around here to the back. You can see the vents as well. This is a good time to observe these soffit vents. That's all going to be part of your attic inspection later, but this is the best time to view those. And I can see a little water damage right up here on the corner on the fascia. I'm going to take a photo of that, focus in, and it looks like we may have some on this outer corner here as well. Try and capture that. That concludes our soffit, eaves, and fascia inspection. We did find a few minor items. We'll note that in our report, and we'll move on to the next section. So now we're going to do a representative amount of exterior windows. And the things that I look for is make sure that the window frame isn't cracked, broken. We don't have any distortion of any kind. We want to make sure these weep drain holes on the bottom frame are open and not plugged up. This is where any outside rain or any kind of moisture that comes in, this is what allows it to drain out of the track of the window. So I make sure those aren't plugged up. I will check the screens, even though that's not part of the SOP, but I want to make sure that the screens aren't bent. These two windows here, they look good. Let's go ahead and move on to another one. So we're going to move on to the next side, and remember we're doing a representative amount of windows, which means approximately one window per side on the house. Again, I want to look at the frame, make sure we don't have any frame distortion of any kind. Want to make sure everything is good and tight in here, that we don't have any points for entry for water. Check our drain holes or weep holes on the bottom of the frame. Make sure we got a place for water to leak out of, get out of the track. This one looks good. So let's move on to another side. This one here has got a bent screen frame, so I probably will note that in my report. Again, I'm looking for my drain holes, make sure they're not plugged up. Looking for any distortion, any kind of cracking, bending, any kind of window breakage, and I don't see anything. So I think we're in good shape here too. Now the SOP tells us to inspect all exterior doors. So we're going to start with the front entry door here. I'm going to go ahead and take a picture just for reference. And right away I can see these side lights, which are on both sides of the entry door. We've got some broken trim around the glass. We've got a lot of failed caulking. They go up and down the sash. Some of these pieces are broken in half. I can see it over here as well. So we've got broken trim and caulking, failed caulking. This is all potential entry points for water. And water could get in here and start to damage the window frame and everything else inside. So we want to get that all noted. Now I'm going to check this storm door. Check the closing device, and it closes and it latches. Now I'm going to move in here to the inner door. I'm going to check all my weather stripping all around the jamb. Those are all in pretty good shape. Check the threshold. Make sure that I don't have any open holes or screws that are drilled into this outer part of the threshold, which would allow water to get in. The door itself, this is a steel door. And what I want to do now is move to the inside and check the locks on this door. I'm going to close this. And we'll see if the deadbolt locks easily. The door latches easily, so that's all good. So let's go ahead and move into the garage and check those doors. We've got one entry door in the back. We have also got our entry door into the house at the firewall. So we'll start with this one right here. I'll get a reference photo. Again, the same routine. Going to be checking the threshold, all the weather stripping. Got a change in weather stripping type up here at the top. Looks like it's been replaced. I do notice we got some underdriven nails here on both sides of the jamb. So I'm going to recommend they get this tightened up. This is a steel door as well, but this has an upper glass in it. Everything looks good and tight here. And we got some peeling paint here, but I can put that in with my maintenance, exterior maintenance report. We'll step in here, we're going to check the locks. Deadbolt locks good. However, we've got a malfunctioning lock, lower lock on here. So I'm going to note that. It doesn't want to lock, and it's not latching. So I think we'll get that in the report. Let's move over here to the fire door. Take a picture. This is a fiberglass door. Fire rated. Here's my certificate here for the fire rating on the door. You want to note that. And we want to see some self-closing hinges on this door. So we've got 3. We're going to see if they're going to function right. It did close the door, but it didn't latch. So I think I'm going to recommend maybe an adjustment on the self-closing hinges. Take a little photo. Okay. We're going to come on in here and we're going to, well, first of all, let's check our weather stripping all along the jamb. Take a look at our threshold. Everything looks good there. Check the deadbolt first, it's good. Lower lock. Let's make sure this lower Takes a little coaxing, but it is working. So I'm going to go ahead and just recommend an adjustment for the self-closing hinges. We want to make sure that this latches by itself. We don't want any gaps here that would allow any vapor or smoke into the house from the garage. So we're going to move on now to the patio door. We'll start with the outside first. Take a reference photo. I can see we've got some loose weather stripping, but I was able to just pop that back in there. We've got some cracking on this plastic molding around the door glass. So we're going to note that. Just check the function of this screen. Seems to be adjusted quite well. Check the reveal here. It's a little stiff. Probably could use a little lubricant, but I think I'm not going to put any notes in for that. Now we can check the locks. Okay, the lock is working well. They do have a secondary lock on here as well. They had it in here before. It looks like it needs to be adjusted to fit this particular door, but that is out of our SOP. So that concludes all of our exterior door inspections. Okay, now we're going to move on to the flashing and the trim. And so what I'm going to do is just start here at these windows on the front of the house. And what I'm looking for is the flashing above the window and all the trim that comes down on the corners and around all the windows and the doors. So I'm looking for that. I'm going to be looking for potential missing caulking, water damage, loose fasteners or loose nails. I will only address any cosmetic things like paint if it's really bad. Go around the entry door here and check that. That trim looks good. Got a little trim up here in the corner. That all looks good there. Just continue on here. We got some trim above the garage door. Our flashing is in place here. That's what we want to see. It does extend clear across, as well as this other door. So that's all in place. Our trim all looks good. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next side of the house. We'll check our corner trim here. The trim next to the soffit. All looks good. Got a little bit of an overdriven nail here. There's really no room for any caulking, so I'm just going to leave that. And we got a little bit of missing paint here at the bottom of the trim. Probably just put that in as some maintenance, recommended maintenance. We do have some underdriven nails here on this brick mold trim, so probably going to put that in too. Again, that's going to be part of their maintenance. We got some missing caulking along here. We'll put that in too as well. So we got some missing caulking here. We'll get that in there. We still got some underdriven nails all around this brick mold on the door. And we do have a little damage here. We got some cracking and some peeling paint. So we'll probably want to address that. That's just going to be part of our maintenance recommendation. Got some more trim here. Trim up along the soffit. Just make sure that it's good and tight. We got some loose corner trim down here. Right down here at the bottom. It's pulled away from the wall. Want to get that tightened up. Got some water damage here at the bottom of this trim. Gonna note that. As well as some loose trim just around the corner. You can see a gap in here. So we want to get this tightened up. and maybe replace this bottom piece because of the water damage that's down here at the bottom. Everything else looks pretty good. I keep moving along. I can see our flashing above the windows here. And we want to make sure our trim's in good shape. A little bit of peeling paint here. If you look underneath here in this trim, this trim never got painted at the bottom. So I want to make sure we note that. Up there we see a little bit of water damage at the bottom of that window trim, the bottom corner. And it looks to be like looks like they never painted the bottom of the trim there. So I want to get that in our report. Overall, I think that, you know, the best way to put this is a lot of this caulking and paint is just part of deferred maintenance. You know, just some maintenance that needs to be kept up on. You know, I like to tell my clients to check this stuff about every 3 to 4 years, especially the caulking. Okay, we're still looking at our trim. Got a gap here, needs some caulking. This trim along the patio door in the back here, this is very common to see any kind of water damage here. So we want to make sure this is good and tight. Again, it looks like we've got some underdriven nails. Want to make sure we get those tightened up. Get some caulking in here along the bottom of the door. We've got more underdriven nails on this siding, or this trim rather, by this window. This is the kitchen window, so we want to make sure we note that. I can see our flashing above. Flashing above over there on that window as well. So that's all in place, that's all good. We've got a loose piece of trim here on the corner. We've got an exposed gap. We've got some loose nails. So we want to get that tightened up, get some caulking in there. We're going to conclude our trim and flashing inspection. And my notes in my report will just show some deferred maintenance. This next part is walkways and driveways. So what we want to do now is we want to take a good close look at our flat work in the driveway. And right away I can see we've got some cracking on that section there. We've got a little bit of cracking back here. But one thing I noticed on this driveway, we got a bit of movement here. So in terms of how much movement, I would say this is probably about 1 inch where this piece here is heaved up from this other surface. So I'm going to note this in my report as a potential trip hazard. In most cases, when you have more than 3/4 of an inch of difference in surface, that can create a trip hazard. Other than that, this driveway looks to be in pretty good shape, other than a little bit of movement and cracking. Pretty typical. So let's go over here to the sidewalk, or the walkway. Take a reference photo, and it's pretty obvious on this one. We've got some settling here, probably well over 1 inch in some spots. So this is actually dropped down. And if you go up here to this upper section, we've got substantial cracking here. We've got some substantial settling where it steps up to the front porch. So I'm going to note this. In some cases, this can be repaired by mud jacking, but it really depends on how severe the cracking is here. So I'm going to note this as substantial movement in the walkway. And I would recommend a professional concrete contractor to come out and take a look at it. Okay, we're going to move on to the side and the back. This is our side walkway. Looks to be in pretty good shape. We've got some varying elevation in the surface of this sidewalk. I think probably it was originally put in that way. I'm going to note that in my report. I also notice over here that there's quite a gap from the end of the sidewalk to where it meets the patio. Apparently that was done intentional that way. I don't know why. But just for my client's information, I'll put that in my report. So now we're going to move on to stairways, stoops, and ramps, and also individual steps too. First thing we're going to do here is we're going to look at this step that's on the patio. And I can see here with this paint line on the trim that this stairway, or this stair, has actually settled probably about 3/4 of an inch. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to exceed the rise between this stair and the entryway through the patio door. The maximum rise should only be about 7 3/4 of an inch. So this is easily over 9 inches. So we're going to note that in my report. That can create a trip hazard. I can also see that right next to the step, some mud jacking has been performed, possibly to raise this, except they didn't raise it enough. I'll make a note of that. So let's go around on the front of the house and look at those steps. We're going to continue on with our steps. Here we are at the front entryway. And we did notice the settling here on this pad prior to this when we did the walkways. So you can also notice here as well, I think that we're going to be pretty close on the 7 3/4 inch rise right here. But I think it'll be okay. We're going to move up and look at these others. I see a little hairline cracking here. And everything looks pretty good here. It looks stable. It doesn't look like it's settled at all. It's pretty solid. There's no cracks in this portion other than that little hairline. And then last installment in our stairway inspection, we're going to look at these steps going from the garage floor up into the house. And first thing we're going to do is check and make sure they're secure for safety. And they are. And everything looks good down here at the bottom. I don't think we're exceeding any of the 7 3/4 inch rise on any of the steps. So in terms of that, I think we're settled right here. I mean, it looks good. Now we're into the section for porches, patios, decks, and balconies. We're going to start up here on the front porch. It's covered. The concrete looks to be in pretty good shape. There's a little cracking along the upper step. You can see it right here. So we've had a little movement. Typically, I'll just recommend to my clients to keep these cracks filled with a good concrete sealer. So actually here on the front porch, we're in pretty good shape. So I think we'll move on to the back and look at the patio. Okay, now we're back here at the patio on the back of the house. I'm going to take a reference photo here. And over here to my left, I can see we've had some pretty substantial settling from where it used to be next to the house. So probably from about this inner corner here, clear across, it's dropped about 1.5 inches. So I'm going to note that in my report. But when I turn around, I can see that they've attempted a mud jacking repair back here to lift this pad back up to its normal level, but they didn't get it done. So I'm going to actually recommend that they get a concrete contractor or a mud jacking contractor out here to correct this, because this is a spot where you could get a lot of water down along the foundation, and that's something we don't want. So let's move out here into the center of the patio. Got a hairline crack here, pretty common. You know, I think that it's good practice to keep the patio where it meets the side of the house, keep that sealed. So I'm going to recommend some caulking or some kind of sealant along here to keep the water from getting down next to the house. So I'll move over here. I can see they've done more mud jacking repairs. We got the same issue over here. We got some pretty substantial settling up next to the house. I'd say 2 inches or more. Again, I think that their repair has failed. And if I look around the corner, we got a crack here on the corner, some substantial settling next to the house, anywhere from 2 or more inches. Again, I see an attempt at a mud jacking repair here, but they just didn't get it done. So I'm going to recommend further review by a concrete contractor. Okay, we're going to move on to railings, guards, and handrails. And the only railings we have on this particular house is out here on the front porch. So I'm just going to go ahead and check these to make sure they're not loose, that they're good and secure. Got some peeling paint there. I'm going to roll that in with part of my maintenance recommendations. However, I do have a loose railing here right up against this brick column. So I'm going to recommend that gets secured. Check this outside railing. And now I'll look on the outside, make sure we don't have any water damage, any loose balusters. Good, everything looks good there, other than we've got a little loose top rail here. Okay, now we're going to move on to vegetation, surface drainage, retaining walls, and grading. So all that's going to be on the exterior of the house. So I'm going to start right here. I'll take some photos here. We've got quite a bit of vegetation up against the house. Typically, we don't want to see it too close to the structure itself, so I'm going to recommend some trimming of these bushes to get it back away from the exterior. We've got some tree overhang up above. It's touching the fascia and is hanging over the roof, so I recommend trimming that. Grading is not ideal here. It's a little low, so I'm going to recommend some additional fill and regrade so the water flows away from the house. I will also look at the grading out here in the front, and this all looks pretty good. We've got a good slope on it. That's what we're looking for. So let's go ahead and move on to the other side of the house. So we're over here on the east side of the home, and obviously we've got our walkway. It goes right up against the house here. It's got a good slope towards me for water, and it looks like we got a pretty decent slope from the part that's up close to the house. So it's sloping this way, so we should have good drainage here. Up along here we could probably use a little bit more fill and some additional grading there. All of this along here looks pretty good. We got maybe a couple of minor low spots, but nothing concerning. Again, we may have some drainage issues here with the patio because of the slope and the settling of the patio itself, so we're going to address that in the patio section. Our slope doesn't look too bad here. Off of this corner, we got some gravel. This is the kind of gravel that moves a lot, so it's going to be hard to get it perfect, but in generally it looks pretty good. I look at it this side over here, the west side of the house. This is not good. We've got piled up soil. We've got a pretty low spot here. It's too high over here towards that window well. So I'm going to recommend a landscaper come in here and clean this up and regrade everything. In the event that we have a heavy rainstorm, we probably would have pooling water right up against the house, and we don't want that to get up next to the foundation and get into the basement. So this definitely is going to show up as needing work. And that concludes our drainage section. We're going to move on to section 3.3, which is basement, crawl space, foundation, and structure. We're going to go ahead and get started with the foundation inspection. This particular home only has one unfinished space where we could view any section of the foundation wall. So I'm going to go down here. Basically, the foundation wall starts here. So I'm going to begin to look to see if I have any cracking or any other issues. I do see I've got a little bit of efflorescence up here, which can signify that I've had some past moisture intrusion. So I'm going to note that in my report. We don't know what the source is, but we can certainly describe that it's here and where the location is on the foundation wall. So we keep on moving down. We do have some obstruction here with some storage shelves that are blocking our view, but we can see a good portion of it. I'm not seeing any structural cracks or even any hairline cracking at all. It looks pretty solid. Typically I see efflorescence down along the bottom where the basement floor meets the foundation wall. And just to give you a reference, we're only viewing about approximately 30 feet of the foundation wall. The remainder of the basement's all finished. We can't see any of that. We see a little bit of efflorescence down here. Not much, but a little bit. No cracking at all. Everything looks pretty solid. In terms of the inspection on the basement foundation, if you have a basement such as this where 95% of it is finished and we could only see just a small portion of the foundation wall in the unfinished room, you probably want to note this in your report. And you could take a reference photo of just a finished wall in the basement or a room and put that in as a reference photo, but usually what I'll do is make a comment. I will put something like 95% of the basement is finished, and it would only allow a very small portion of a view, and so it was an extremely limited inspection on the foundation wall. That way your client or anybody else knows that you couldn't view these walls because they're all finished, so you want to exclude that. So now we're going to go on and start inspecting the basement area. So we're going to just take a walk around here, and I'm going to be looking for any potential structural issues in the drywall. I might add that this basement is entirely finished, so our view of anything is going to be pretty limited. But what I'm looking for is uneven spots in the floor, low spots, maybe some concrete heaving underneath in the flooring. Cracking in the drywall that might be a sign of structural issues. We'll move on to the next room. Typically, I like to walk along the foundation wall to see if I can feel any anomalies in the floor. So far, so good. So far in the interior, I'm not really seeing anything. Everything looks pretty good. I do like to take a look at these window wells too that are attached to the foundation, just to see if we got any issues there. So I'd say all in all, in this basement, everything looks good. That concludes our basement inspection. We're going to talk about the crawl space part of 3.3. This particular home does not have a crawl space. However, the only thing you can do is exclude it in your report. If there was a crawl space in this home, you would probably want to enter that crawl space. Take a look at the structure, look for any moisture intrusion into the crawl space, look to see if they have a vapor barrier, look to see if there's any issues with concrete walls of the foundation. There's a number of things you can look at down there, and it's very important because that's an area that sometimes will not get viewed. So pay close attention if you do get in a crawl space for any safety issues as well, like stored items that make it so you can't view everything. Just keep in mind that you know, crawl spaces are just dark and dingy, and sometimes the access is not very good to get into, so just make sure that everything is safe for the inspector too. Okay, now we're going to do the structural components, and we're going to start in this little unfinished area in the basement, since this is the only spot we can view any of the flooring structure components. And I can see that we've got some plywood TGAIs as our floor joists. The decking or the subfloor is an OSB material. I'm just going to look for any bowing or cracking of any of these components. We also have a steel I-beam, which is part of the main support. And back here, we've got a micro-lam beam right at the top of the stairs. This is carrying the weight of the stairway at the top. Everything looks pretty good. I'm not seeing any issues whatsoever. Any twisting or sagging. But again, we're just in a very small area where we can review this kind of material. The rest of the basement's 95% finished, so we're going to have to exclude that in that report. This is section 3.4 heating. The inspector shall operate the heating system and describe the heating system using the normal operating controls. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to locate the thermostat, and we're here on the first floor. And this is our thermostat. This is a smart thermostat. So we're going to set this up a little bit high so we can go downstairs to the furnace and see if we can get the furnace to engage. We're down here at the furnace in the basement, and basically this is just a mechanical room for this type of equipment. I'm going to go ahead and take a reference photo of the furnace, and I am going to remove the front cover so I can view everything on the inside. Okay. We'll see if we can get this furnace to ignite. I'm going to take a few reference photos. When I first look at the furnace, I've already discovered that this is a gas forced air type furnace. It's an upflow, and over here I can see that I've got a fuel line here, and this is a natural gas fuel line. I can look at my burners right here. I've got a draft inducing fan, and the first thing I notice now is that after we adjusted the thermostat to ignite the furnace, that it is not igniting. The circulation fan has come on, but the burners are not lighting, and it's not attempting to ignite as well. So we're going to take a photo, and I'm going to put that in my report. Now probably what I'll do is recommend that they get a review by an HVAC technician, a professional. Typically in my reports, I generally recommend a cleaning, recertification by a licensed HVAC technician. The reason I do that is because we don't have the instrumentation to test these thoroughly, so it's better if a professional takes a look at it. Now we're going to conclude our inspection for the heating system. We'll make sure we document everything we found. We're moving on to 3.5, cooling. The inspector shall describe the cooling method and the normal operating controls. So again, we're here at the thermostat. We are going to try to engage the AC. And I can see here that it's showing that it's been engaged. We'll go down again so you can see it. You see the change right there. So let's go outside and take a look at that condenser. We're outside here at our condenser. I'm going to take a reference photo. One of the things I can see is we have some buildup here on the coils. So I'm going to recommend a cleaning of the coils. This will really affect the efficiency of the unit. The other thing I can see up here at the top is got some wires sticking above. I'm going to go ahead and document that. And I'm also going to take a photo of this debris for our report. I'm going to come around here. The unit seems to be pretty level. Also want to look at the insulation on the refrigerant lines. Looks to be in decent shape, and we have a disconnect within sight. In terms of performing, it seems like it's performing well. So that concludes our cooling section. We're now going to start section 3.6, plumbing. And the first thing we're going to do is look at the main water supply shutoff valve. And right down here in the basement, this yellow handled valve would be our main water supply shutoff valve. Our main water supply coming in is copper, 3/4 inch. And so while we're here, we're going to take a look and make sure we have no leakage or anything in the main water line. This feeds the entire house on the inside. Everything looks pretty solid. So we're going to conclude that part of the inspection, and we'll move on to the next one. Okay, now we're going to inspect the main fuel supply shutoff valve. We're going to have to go outside by the gas meter to take a look at this. And over here to the right of the gas meter is a valve that could be used to shut the gas source off to the inside of the house. And this is on the outside of the house. It looks to be in good shape. It's a little rusty, but you know, typically they all get a little rusty from being outside, but it looks like it's in good shape, and we don't have any gas leaks here because I can't smell any gas, so I think we're good. Now we're down here, we're going to do the water heating equipment. And what we've got here is a water heater. I'm going to take a reference photo for my report. First thing I'm going to do is start up here at the top. I'm going to check my ventilation pipe, make sure it's all secure, all the fasteners are in place. I don't have any signs of corrosion or any holes. Everything looks to be good and solid on both sides. And now I'm going to move on to the top of the tank. I can see right away I've got some corrosion on both sides, right below the dielectric fittings. So I'm going to take some photographs, put that in my report, and I'm going to recommend that a plumber take a look at that. So moving on down, next thing I want to look for is some seismic bracing. And it appears we don't have any on this water heater. So I'm going to go ahead and take a photograph, and I'm going to recommend that in my report. Next thing I'm going to look at is this TPR valve. It's in place. I don't see any corrosion around the base. I want to make sure I've got my extension on here that goes all the way towards the floor. Typically you want to see no more than 6 inches between the extension and the floor itself. Also want to make sure we're close to a floor drain in case the water heater would have to release any high pressure. Moving on down here, I'm going to check our fuel source here. We're on natural gas here, and here's our shutoff valve for the water heater. So this is a natural gas water tank. Check our gas line, make sure it looks like everything's good there. I think that this is a little bit loose here. I think I'll recommend they secure this gas line a little bit better to the wall. You also want to make sure that you've got a trap down here on the bottom of the gas line, because this will allow any solids or any debris that's in the gas to settle in down below here in this little trap. That's pretty important. So I think that pretty much wraps up our water heater inspection. Okay, now we're going to be doing the interior water supply, which includes all of the interior fixtures and faucets, and we're going to do that by running some water. We're in the kitchen right now. We're going to start with running some water. I'm going to take a look down here and make sure that we don't have any obvious leaks. Running some water. Not seeing anything so far. The next thing you want to do is just verify you got hot water. So right now we're in hot, and I have verified that it's hot. So I'm going to move to the cold and go back down here again. Check and see if we have any leaks. Check the base of the sink. Check around the disposal. And I think that we're dry down here. I don't see any evidence of past leaks or current leaks. So I think we're good. So I'm going to just go ahead and get a reference photo here of the sink. I'm going to shut this water off. And for the sake of this video, we're going to be just inspecting one bathroom and the kitchen. So we're going to move on to do a bathroom now. Okay, we're going to continue on with our interior water supply. This is actually part 2. This is going to be the bathrooms. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to start some water, both sinks. And I'm also going to turn some water on in the tub. This is a good way to check to see how good your water pressure is. Now I'm going to start some in the shower. So I'm going to go down below, start looking for any leaks that might be happening. I'm not seeing anything on this sink. So now I'm going to verify my hot water. I'll shut my cold off. Make sure the other side's hot and I got hot water. So I verified that. Take one more look. Everything looks good on that sink. This particular bathroom is the master bath and it has dual sinks. Again, I'm going to check for any leakage. I'm going to come up here and shut the cold off. Check, make sure we got hot water. We do. Check again. I don't see anything there. Tub seems to be running good. I'm going to shut the cold. Verified hot water. I'm going to check our drain and make sure we're draining well. Also want to note that this particular tub is a jet tub. In terms of our SOP, we're not required to test these. So if you do test jet tubs, you want to make sure that you include those in your report. And if you have one and you don't inspect it, you want to exclude it in your report. So now we're going to move over to the shower. I had that on hot, so now I'm putting it to a mix of hot and cold. So it's a little bit warmer. I'm just checking my faucets, faucet heads up here, faucet handles, make sure I don't have any leakage. This is an opportunity to recommend any kind of caulking, like around the base of these faucets. I would probably recommend this, get some caulking, and any caulking as well in your shower enclosure. This one here looks like it sure could use some new caulking as well. Okay, we're going to move on to toilets. We're going to be just inspecting for proper operation. And for the sake of this video, we are just going to show you just one toilet in this home. So we're just going to go over here to the lever. Just operate it normally. Look for proper drainage. You know, we can look for any potential leak around the base or around the supply valve. I don't see any. We're just going to give it a couple seconds here to make sure it fills up properly and shuts off. Okay, it filled up. The float valve shut it off in the tank. So this toilet is operating properly. So now we're going to test for a functional drainage at the sinks, the tub, and the shower. Okay, so we're going to be looking at our drain down here. If I had a water buildup in this shower pan, if it was backing up, I should see it by now. But it actually looks like it's draining well. A lot of times what can happen in these drains, they can get hair clogs in them, and it can really affect the proper drainage. Okay, we're going to shut this water off to the tub. I'm going to view my drain. It looks good. It's flowing really easily and well. So I'm going to go over to the sinks, do the same. Shut both of these off. And we've easily got these drained quick. Everything looks good. Everything's functional. While we're down in the unfinished area, we're going to take a look at the drain, vent, and waste system. We're going to have a very limited view of this. So I can see that we've got some PVC pipe and it connects with our main. This is actually our main sewer drain right here. We've got a clean out right here next to the floor. This part here, this black pipe, is an ABS, and we're going to take a look at that. We're just going to look for any potential leaks. But again, this is a very limited view. A lot of this piping is behind finished walls and you won't be able to look at it. So we have to take the opportunity down here in the unfinished area to see what we can find. We'll go back. There's a little bit more behind us here. They do have strapping on these pipes, which is good. They're being supported. Just look for any leaks. Got another clean out here. This is another major line going underneath the concrete. We got a little bit more behind us here. Everything looks pretty good. It's all secure. I don't see any leaks. So we're good there. Okay, now we're going to look at our plumbing venting. This is a Studer vent. We got one here. This is in the basement. This is for the basement bathroom, which is behind this wall to my left. So that all looks good. We don't have any leakage coming around it. We got another one up here on this line here. That's a little bit larger Studer type vent, but everything looks good from what I can see. However, we also have some venting that goes up through the roof in the plumbing system. This is section 3.7 electrical, and we're going to start with the service drop. And it's over here on the east side of the house. I'm going to take a reference photo. This is an all-in-one unit. It's the meter and the circuit breaker box all in one. And so I'm going to be looking at everything that's connected to this. Like here's my riser, my service riser comes up here to the bottom. I want to make sure that everything's tight and there's no loose connections with the conduit. So now we're going to open up the circuit breaker panel here on the bottom. This is an exterior panel. I'm going to take a photo. This is a 200 amp main disconnect. There's a 200 amp breaker. By shutting this off, that would shut everything down below on this panel. So now I'm just going to take a brief view here of what I've got for circuit rating on these circuit breakers and look at where they're feeding, what rooms. Make sure that we don't have any breakers that are too big or oversized or undersized. We've got 2 arc fault breakers here in the panel for the basement and the basement bedroom. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to test these. Okay, that tripped. That tripped. Okay, I'm going to reset. So our arc faults seem to be functional. They tested correct. In the SOP it talks about an overhead service drop, and on this particular house we don't have an overhead feed. Our service feed comes in from the bottom, and without pulling the dead front off I can't view those conductors. If I pull this dead front off I'm going to exceed the SOP. So in terms of this, we're not going to be able to put anything in for this. In terms of service head, gooseneck, and drip loops, there isn't any on this house. So we're going to put a reference photo in for you so you can see what they look like. We're going to go on to the surface mast, raceway, and conduit. And in this case, we have an underground service, so it comes up from the ground into the bottom of the service equipment. Everything looks secure here. We want to make sure that it's good and solid, that the fitting with the lock nut on it is good and tight. We can't see the conductors inside, so we just have to judge what we can see from the outside. So this is a pretty simple application here, so that pretty much concludes this. Okay, we're going to talk about the electrical meter and base now. And one of the first things I like to do is make sure that it's good and secure to the wall, and it is. The one thing I've noticed here that there is no meter seal on here. There should be a meter seal that is applied by the utility. This is for security purposes. That way, if it gets cut off, like in this case, it makes you have to be concerned that somebody got in here and made modifications. So I'm going to recommend to my client that they call the electrical utility company to come out and check this meter base and reseal it. Okay, we're going to move on to the service entrance conductors. And in this case, because we're going to stick to the SOP and we're not going to pull the dead front off the panel, we cannot view the service entrance conductors inside. So we probably will exclude those in our report. Now we're moving to the main service disconnect. We got a little tag here. It says service disconnect. It's a breaker. It's rated at 200 amps. We do not test these. So all you do is just record what you can see here, and that concludes that. Now we're going to look at our overcurrent protection devices and our panel boards. This is considered our main distribution panel. These are our overcurrent protection devices, our breakers. You can see that they are labeled all the way up and down on both sides. I like to just go through real quick and match them up with the current rating on the breaker to make sure that we don't have anything that's oversized or undersized. I think we're good here. Everything looks good. This section is the service grounding and bonding portion of the electrical. We're going to be checking a couple of visual points that we can actually see. Now, in terms of the bonding, internal bonding in the panel itself, because we would exceed the standards of practice by pulling the dead front off, we're not going to be able to view that portion. So, okay, so we're going to go down here and check the ground rod, part of the service grounding. And right away, I'm going to just make sure that these connectors are tight. Here's our grounding electrode wire. This is considered to be our grounding electrode. That's the ground rod. Everything looks to be tight and pretty clean. I can see that it comes up over here and goes directly into the panel, the service panel. So everything looks pretty good here. We're now going to move on to the water main and check that ground connection down there in the basement. Okay, we're now in the basement of the home, and I wanted to come down here and check the other grounding connection point on the water main coming into the house. I can see our clamp right here, so I'm just going to make sure that that's tight. This is a copper water main line. Here's my grounding electrode wire back here, and as I'm coming up to look at that, I've noticed that there's no bonding jumper around the water meter itself. I'm going to mention that. I'm going to take a photo of this and I'm going to mention this in my report. The importance of this bonding jumper is that if the meter is ever removed for maintenance, or if any of these internal gaskets or seals on these fittings are non-conductive, then we wouldn't have the continuity through the water line like we want with our ground. So I'm just going to take a photo of that real quick. I'll mention that in my report. Everything else looks pretty good. That will conclude our grounding and bonding for this portion of the electrical inspection. Now we're going to cover the representative amount of switches, receptacles, light fixtures, and AFCI receptacles or AFCI protected receptacles. And in this case, our AFCI breakers are located in the main distribution panel. And so it's going to be easier for me to just test these from here, the test button. They both tripped as they should. Now I'm going to do a reset. They both reset fine. Now let's move inside. Okay, this is part J. We're going to be doing a representative amount of testing the lights, switches, and receptacles, including the AFCI receptacles, which are in this house or in the basement. So I'm just going to turn this light on, try that. And usually a representative amount of receptacles would be about 1 or 2 per room. Plug my meter in. Looking for polarity, correct polarity, that's all good there. That one's good. Let's move on to another one. Okay, we're good there. Occasionally you should test the bottom one as well. So we're all good. Let's go into one more room and do our lighting. We'll check our light switch, it's all functional. We'll come in here and test a couple of receptacles. We're good there. That one's good as well. So we're all good and functional in this bedroom. Now we're going to do a representative amount of the receptacles that are on the AFCI circuits and it's in the circuit breaker panel. So we're down here in the basement and basically we're just looking for polarity on these, and you don't have to test every single receptacle, but you should test at least a few in each room if you can. The reason I'm not going to do an AFCI test trip here from the receptacle is because I've already done the test trip from the breaker in the panel. So it's unnecessary to do it from both locations. Okay, these are all good. So our AFCI circuits look good. Okay, we're going to be doing some GFCI testing now. We're in one of the second floor bathrooms. This is a normal receptacle, but it should be tied to a GFCI receptacle or breaker located somewhere else. So I'm going to do the test button, and it tripped it. So that verifies that this one is GFCI protected. So now let's go see if we can find where it's being fed from. Going into the master bath, I can see that I've got a GFCI receptacle over here to my left. I've got another standard outlet here, and it is dead. So now I'm going to do a reset and retest. And let me go over here and test this one. And it tests correct. So now we know that both of these bathrooms on the second floor are GFCI protected. We're still working on our ground fault circuit interrupters and for the bathrooms in the garage and the exterior. I'm here in the main floor in the half bath. This is a normal receptacle. It is polarized correctly, but in order to assure that this is on a GFCI, I still got to do the test button, and it kicked it off. So somewhere it's being fed by a GFCI, so we just need to find that so we can reset it. So we'll continue on, and we'll go down to the basement, take a look at that bathroom and see if that's where our GFCI is. We got a bar sink here that I'm going to test because it's close to the water. This should be GFCI protected, and it is. So let's go in the bathroom in here. Uh-oh. Bathroom light is on the GFCI. So we verified that this GFCI is working by testing that other receptacle in the bar sink. Having the lights on this circuit is no problem. That's pretty common. So we're going to go ahead and note that this one is correct. We still have to find the GFCI for the main floor half bath. So now I think I'm going to look in the garage. So I'm here in the garage, and we've got one GFCI here. This one's still energized. So I'm going to test this. Okay, it's back on, retest. Perfect. So we still need to find the GFCI for the half bath. And my last suspicion is that it's up in the master bath. So we got to go back up there. Okay, so the master bath GFCI feeds the half bath on the main level too. So all of the bathrooms are all circuited together. That will conclude our GFCI testing. Okay, now we're going to check for the presence of smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. And we're on the second floor right now, and I can visually see that we've got a battery operated carbon monoxide detector up here on the wall. I will take a reference photo, and it looks like the placement is correct. It has to be within 15 feet of all bedrooms. So I've got two bedrooms to my left and I've got one to my right. So the placement of this meter, it looks like it's correct. So we also have to check for the presence of smoke detectors as well. So I'm in the master bedroom here, and I can see right here on the ceiling that we have one here. And I also noticed in the other bedrooms that there was also a smoke detector as well. So I am going to take a reference photo. So the next location I'm looking for a CO detector is close to the bedroom that's in the basement. And I can see up here on the wall that I've got a battery operated carbon monoxide detector, and it's well within the 15 feet range that's required to be close to the bedroom. Also above here in the basement, we've also got smoke detectors as well. I'm going to take some reference photos, and I will document these in the report. This is going to be section 3.8, fireplaces. We're going to be inspecting the readily accessible chimneys or fireplaces. So in this one here, this is a gas log. I'm going to take a photo here for my report. I'm going to be looking at my lintels up here. Down here at the bottom, I want to make sure that I've got fire-resistant material. This is all wrapped with drywall up here. These doors are sealed or locked into place on these fireplaces. So I'm going to come down here, open up this maintenance panel. What I'm looking for down here, I want to make sure I've got a gas shutoff, and it's in the open position right now. It's pretty dirty down here, so I'll probably recommend a cleaning. Get all this dust out of here. Everything looks pretty good in there, other than all the lint and dirt in there. Now I'm going to do a test. Okay, it did ignite. I expect to see some moisture build up on the inside of this glass. Usually there's a little bit of condensate inside. The flame will burn that off eventually to clear it up. Got pretty good flame color. Seems to be operating pretty well. This one also has a circulating fan. We'll shut that off. Circulating fan's working good. We'll see if the burner goes off. And it did. So that concludes our fireplace inspection. I'm going to take a look at this lintel above the fireplace opening. And everything looks good. Looks like we got good clearance. This is all fire-resistant material, tile. We got a drywall wrapping up here. So that portion of it looks good. Okay, now we're going to address the SOP part where it says damper doors, if they're readily accessible. In this case, we have a gas log fireplace. These are not operable doors. This is a fixed glass over this fireplace. So in this case, we can't do any damper door testing. Typically, you'll see damper doors on wood-burning fireplaces, and that would be where you would want to test those. Next, we're going to talk about clean out doors and frames. Again, this is another case where we've got a gas log fireplace. Typically we're going to see clean out doors on wood burning fireplaces or wood burning, in some cases, wood burning stoves. So we can't do that inspection on this. We're going to start section 3.9, attics, and this says that inspectors shall inspect insulation in unfinished areas such as attics, crawl spaces, and foundations. In this particular home here, we do not have a crawl space, but we do have a small unfinished area in the basement we'll be looking at. We're going to go ahead and take a look up in the attic space. Okay, what we have up here is we've got approximately 16 inches of blown-in fiberglass insulation. And it looks to be covered really well. I don't see any uncovered spaces, which could develop some cold spots in the finished area below. I'm going to take a couple of reference photos while I'm up here. So everything up here looks really good. It's covered well, and it seems to be throughout the surface of the attic space, so I don't see any problems. We're going to move on to our unfinished area in the basement. We're down here in the unfinished room in the basement, and we're going to be inspecting the insulation in unfinished spaces. So the only insulation that we've got down here is going to be the insulation that insulates the rim joist around the outside wall. So we just want to look at that and make sure that we don't have any open gaps where cold air could come in. That all looks good there. We got a little bit more back here. Everything seems to be in place for this room, so that should conclude our insulation in unfinished spaces. Now we're going to move on to the ventilation of unfinished spaces. So I'm going to take another look up here in the attic space to check our ventilation. What I'm seeing right now is we've got roof vents. They look to be spaced correctly, and out along the eaves and soffits I can visually see the baffles for the soffit vents, and it is above the level of the insulation. Everything looks good. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the inspection for the mechanical systems, the kitchen, and the bathrooms while we're up here. And that all seems to be in good shape. Everything looks good. It's meeting all the requirements. So that should conclude this portion. Okay, we're going to start section 310, interior windows and doors. And we're going to start by operating a representative amount of windows and doors on the interior of the house. So what a representative amount means is typically at least 1 to 2 windows and doors per room. So we're going to go ahead and start with these 2 doors here by the entryway. Usually I want to just make sure I can open it all the way. Check the door frame, the jamb, make sure that I don't have any cracks, anything that might affect the operation. I'm going to go ahead and close and latch it. And then I'm going to check the gaps all the way around. Also look at the hinges too to make sure that you don't have any pins that are sticking up. And then just kind of rattle the door a little bit. I'll try it one more time. That door's good. Let's go ahead and move over to this one. Same thing. I'm going to go ahead and open it as far as I can get it. Now I'm going to close. Okay, that latched. Look at the door jamb. Check it for any damage. So I'm going to go on the inside now and check the gaps on the door, just like I did the door next to it. Everything looks good on these 2 doors. Now let's go ahead and test some windows. I'll go ahead and open some of these blinds. Okay, so these windows here are in the living room area of this home. So we're going to unlock them. We're going to open them. When I operate these type of windows, these are a single hung type window. I want to make sure they stay up when I open them. I'm going to look for any counterbalance springs that may be out of position. Usually you'll see them, they'll pop out and then they'll come down into the track on the side of the window, and then the window will be cockeyed. It won't stay in the frame square. So these look to be in good shape. I'm going to close it. Make sure my locks function well and easy. Now, most all windows should operate easily. Okay, those two seem good. Now, when it comes to bedroom windows, you really want to make sure they operate easily because those are egress escape windows. And the last thing you want is a window that's stuck in case of a fire. This window is a slider. This is a pretty good sized window. I'm going to do the same thing here. Going to move it and open it as much as I can. I'm going to be looking at the track, see if we have any obstruction. Check the screens. Going to operate it now again to close. Check the locks. They function smoothly. A lot of times what can affect the window operation is just dirty tracks. And occasionally they will need to be cleaned just to make sure that these windows move easily. And everything looks good. These are in good shape and they operate very smoothly. Okay, we're going to do some floors, walls, and ceilings. I'm going to start up here on the wall. And what I'm looking for is any cracking, potential bulging in the walls, which might signify we've got some foundation problems or structure issues. Also want to look for any stains around windows where we might get some moisture intrusion. We do have a little bit of hairline cracking here, but that's in the drywall surface. I don't think that poses any kind of a structural issue. We'll go up here. Check this wall up high. Any transitional spot in the ceiling, like up high here. I can see potentially one hairline crack in the drywall right there. That is pretty common. That's probably in the drywall joint itself. And usually that does not signify any kind of structural issue. I'm going to move down here on the floor. When it comes to floors, typically what you want to look for is just any spots that might be unlevel, bulging, potential anomalies from the subfloor that might be happening. If you want to walk the floor around the edge, that's a good idea, just to make sure that you don't feel anything in the floor. Make sure that you don't mistake a tack strip along the edge as something wrong with the flooring, because usually you're going to get a little bit of a high spot there where that carpet tack strip is. Let's go over here to an hard surface floor. This is a wood tongue and groove. We can look for cracking here. In terms of any issues here, I just don't see any. Everything looks pretty solid. It's level. I think we're good. Okay, we're going to move on to stairs, steps, landings, and ramps. So what we've got here, we've got a landing at the bottom of our second story stairway, right by the entry door. And it's a hard surface, hard wood. We've got a newel post here at the very base. It's very, very sturdy. That's a good thing. Just make sure we've got some clearance at the bottom, and it looks like we're exceeding the necessary clearance at the bottom of the stairs. And what I like to do here on the stairway is check my rise. You know, we're about 7 1/4 inches on our rise. and they're all very consistent. So that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and take some reference photographs here. I'm going to go ahead and walk up the stairs. We got a landing up here at the top as well, and it actually is meeting all of the required size. Just make sure you give it a good view and check everything to make sure that it's good and solid. Stairways can be very dangerous, especially for elderly people and children. This one's in good shape and it's very secure. Okay, we're going to do a little bit about railings, guards, and handrails. And the first thing we're going to do is check our newel posts, our handrails, our balusters. We're going to check them to make sure they're good and solid and secure. And as well, we want to check our gaps between the balusters too, to make sure that they'll meet the child safety recommendations. I'm going to measure the distance between my balusters. We're about 4 1/4 on center. So that should be good as well. So I'm just going to go on up here. I'm going to walk, and I'm going to just kind of check a few of these balusters along with the handrail, just to make sure they're good and tight. Here's another newel post at the top. We're going to check this handrail. We'll just do a little check here on our balusters. Give it a quick look on the outside. This one's in good shape. It's good and tight, and it feels very safe. We're going to move on and do the garage vehicle door inspection. We're going to be using the normal operating controls. Before I do that, I like to take a quick view of the doors just to see if there's anything that looks out of order. If I have any bent hardware, any potential roller issues. It's always good to look at this first before you operate it. You also want to look at the tension spring up here and make sure it's not broken. So this is just a very brief hardware inspection to make sure that if we go to operate this door that something doesn't go wrong. So now I'm going to move over and push the button to open the big door. I'm going to take a quick look here at the chain on the garage door opener to make sure it's not too loose. That all looks good. Just give this opener a little shake to make sure it's fastened up to the ceiling well and it's pretty solid. And the other door, the smaller door in the garage, I'm going to go over here. I'm going to have to operate it manually. There's no opener on it. They seem to operate pretty smoothly. You can kind of tell that this door hasn't been used much. So just take a quick look at everything, make sure the alignment looks good. I'm going to go ahead and close this one. And now I'm going to test the reverse safety on our garage door opener. Go ahead and close it. Go out here and put my foot in the beam. So our reverse safety works well. So now we're going to go ahead and just shut it all the way. We'll take a look at it. This door is operating very smoothly. I don't think we have any issues on these vehicle doors. Thanks for watching our Standards of Practice inspection course. We're going to conclude right now, and I'd like to remind you that the Standards of Practice are basically a guide for home inspectors. You are allowed to exceed those if you like, but that's your choice. So thanks for joining us and happy inspections.